What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. So here we are, looking at yet another of Putin's grand ideas, naming 2025 as the Defender of the Motherland year. The country is on the brink of economic collapse, the war has stalled completely, and the only hope he has is that the unpredictable president of his most hated country decides to stick to his words, keeps his promises, and makes winning for him just a little bit easier. In case America does fully withdraw its support to Ukraine, there is still Europe, which has an actual war right on their doorstep. So now they are motivated more than ever to do everything possible to help Ukraine win. So hopes of Putin that everything will just magically resolve itself as it usually happened in the past, well, these hopes are very fragile and unbiased. Yet, he still decided to fully withdraw himself from the situation and let the course of action take its free flow. Instead, he decided to do what his regime does the best: brainwash his own people and double down on propaganda, such as once again proclaiming 2025 as the year of the defenders of the motherland. Should we applaud such patriotism? Highly questionable. His house is on fire and he hopes his neighbors will call the local fire department, while Putin himself goes to another room where he cannot see fire and decides to make himself a cup of tea. There is no fire if you cannot see it, right? And when the firefighters do extinguish the flames and call Putin to get out of the room, voila, there is no fire. Exactly what Putin thought. So why worry about something that will be solved without your intervention? Until it doesn't. And even then, instead of taking responsibility that he left fireplace burning without supervision, he can simply just blame and punish someone else. Neighbors who did not call the fire department on time, the firefighters who did not arrive fast enough, and the builders who made his house out of wood instead of stone. Putin is never ever to blame. That's the world he has been living in for the last 2 decades, surrounded by very talented problem solvers. But the issue here is that most, if not all, Russia's problems in the past were mainly internal. Well, not anymore. No matter how good you are at solving the problems, there are limitations at what you can and cannot do. So as usual, Putin left external things alone and focused once again on what he can influence: the domestic propaganda. Celebrating the entire 2025, honoring the defenders of Russia. It sounds like a tribute to national pride even, right? But the real purpose could not be more transparent. This is not just about wearing St. George ribbons or humming war tunes. It's about fusing the tragedy of World War II with a brutal invasion next door. It's the same narrative that Kremlin has been pulling for 2 decades, only now it is bigger, more convincing, and downright offensive. Well, the twist? It doesn't seem to be working all that well, despite the state's media's best efforts at reviving the Nazis are back narrative. Citizens, especially those who find themselves in the crosshairs of forced recruitment, are proving less cooperative than they anticipated. So today, let's explore how this new attempt to mix old heroism with modern aggression is destined to fail, and while the government's push to draw analogies of 1945 on 2025 feels both desperate and doomed. The big bang in this saga goes back to 2005. That was when Putin took what he had long been a family-based heartfelt celebration of May 9th and turned it to a massive state carnival. The 60th anniversary of the Great Victory became the perfect backdrop for rebranding Russia's past. Gone were the intimate gatherings of veterans, swapping stories over tea. Instead, we got official parades, celebrity concerts, religious-like fervor around every war memorial, and an almost sacrilegious devotion to newly minted symbols. Overnight, ribbons appeared everywhere, forging a link between patriotism and unquestioning loyalty to the regime. But in that spectacle lay a powerful message: respect for the war that now meant respecting the government, and by extension any policy it might pursue in the present. May 9th used to be a bittersweet celebration. People were grateful for their ancestors' sacrifices, happy and hopeful about the future, and fearful that anything like that might ever happen again. The most popular toast around tables across entire Russia was Let's drink, guys, for our veterans, and let's pray it never happens again. Well, now, things changed completely. May 9th parade became the demonstration of strength and power. Until 2022 at least, couple recent parades only had one tank in them because the rest were destroyed in Ukraine, but that's another story. The celebration turned hostile. Don't mess with Russia or we will destroy you. The chants changed from let's do everything possible to never have wars again and honor the sacrifices of our ancestors. It changed to we can repeat 1940s if you let us. Don't you dare do anything that we will not like. The intention is that such people think they're going to repeat what the Red Army did more than 8 years ago, while in reality it looks like that this time the sides switched completely. Back then, the actual veterans were well into their twilight years, so they could not exactly form a political resistance. They were too few and too frail to oppose the narrative that was being spun around them. For the Kremlin, that was ideal. The survivors of World War II were still living proof of Russia's ultimate sacrifice, yet they no longer had any real influence. Exploiting their heroism was as simple as snapping a photo of or airing a short interview on state TV. The people who fought hard to bring peace to Russia and the rest of the world are now being used in militaristic propaganda machine. Imagine the US using their World War II veterans and threatening Japan not to mess with the United States of America, the greatest country in the world. In reality, 2005 was the moment the regime of Putin discovered its ideological goldmine, which is the Great Patriotic War. The formula was simple: invoke that victory often enough, but not too much, and any opposition or foreign policy fiasco could be instantly be labeled fascist, traitorous, or disrespectful to the memory of those who fought. Real story here, guys. If you say that Russian veterans fought for peace, you might be considered a traitor. What you need to say is that you're fighting Nazis and protecting the sovereignty of the Soviet borders. And don't even dare to put Soviet Union and Ukraine in the same sentence. That is straight to jail. You see, Russia as we know it is barely a few decades old, so the people in power have always struggled to link themselves with any grand historical event. The Romanovs are an ancient history, the Soviet Union is a contradictory memory, and the short-lived post-Soviet era hardly inspires warm feelings. Yet the victory over the Nazi Germany remains a uniting force, one no Russian could easily deny. So the Kremlin latched on it extremely tight. It feels like that Putin lives from Victory Day Parade to Victory Day Parade. Throughout the year, the patriotic feelings fade away and they need a renewal. So May 9th celebration works perfect in this case. Just like a person who lives from salary to salary, from paycheck to paycheck. It gets tough couple of days before he gets money, but a payday is always a big celebration and relief. Until you start running short on funds again. By 2014, when the first wave of conflict with Ukraine began, the state TV channels had already made a script. These enemies are fascist heirs of the Nazis, and we, modern Russians, carry the heroic torch of our grandfathers. It was neat, it was cinematic, and for a time it worked well on older audiences who had grown up revering May 9th as the holiest of days. But here is what the cracks started to show. While the propaganda hammered away for years, blaming Banderovцы, neo-Nazis and the entire West, life in Russia remained tethered to the economic hardship, corruption, and the daily hustle. People heard the slogans about defending the motherland, but they also noticed rising prices and sinking wages. By the time the full-scale invasion of Ukraine kicked off, the hype about fighting an existential threat was not matching the reality. Even the most loyal patriots sensed something was really off. If the cause was truly as dire as 1941, why were the official narratives focused more on signing bonuses and contract deals rather than defending the Russian soil? Guys, ask this question every single person who will be defending the invasion in front of you. It is always funny to see them struggle, even though they perfectly know well the exact answer. The fiasco of partial mobilization in September of 2022 proved that 8 years of prime-time fear-mongering had accomplished almost nothing. Instead of lines of young men enthusiastically enlisting, we saw lines of families at border checkpoints, hundreds of cars stuck in immovable jams, everyone trying to save their fathers, sons and brothers. The state had no mass volunteer waves. It had to rely on forced mobilization, scare tactics, and the lure of big shiny paychecks. That was the moment many Russians collectively realized that the Great War references were just cheap stickers slapped onto a different beast altogether. People were not picking up arms because they felt an emotional call to fight Third Reich ghosts. They were being forced or bribed to do so. Once the government realized that the fear of Nazis alone was not going to fill its ranks, they pivoted to a purely transactional approach. Huge sums of money, debt relief, and the promise of a more comfortable life became the headlines of every recruitment poster. The biggest words on such posters and billboards used to be "Motherland calls you," "Protect our people," "Come to defend our historic lands." And now, the biggest words are the following: 4.5 million rubles, 200,000 rubles per month, debt cancellation. They wanted to keep that old morale high ground, the "we are finishing what our ancestors started" vibe, but it was overshadowed by the voices of desperation. You cannot pretend you are forging a new great patriotic war if you're also dangling stacks of cash in front of recruits. It's like a rehash of a 1940s epic, except everyone's only there for the paycheck and hoping they will not actually have to fire a single shot. It is not exactly the stuff of epic poems, right? The Z propaganda realized it as well, a long time ago most likely. So now their main goal is to continue pushing the narrative that Putin gives them and create a sense of shame in those who do not want to enlist and die in Ukraine. But there are almost no tales of being remembered forever in history books. So now we arrive at 2025, labeled with the lofty title The Defenders of the Motherland Year. It is meant to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War. On the surface, it sounds like a sincere tribute. In practice, it's a clumsy attempt to blend a tragic, all-consuming conflict with the messy entanglement we see today. The government is busy planning grandiose events, big parades, and probably more state-of-the-art visuals to remind everyone of the old glory. The trouble is, they are not exactly calling this a war. Even in their ads, they avoid the word completely. Instead, it is a conflict or an invitation to sign a lucrative contract on different terms and participate in the activities in the zone of the special military operation. It does not scream defend your homeland like your grandfathers did. It's more like a job listing for a few months abroad, only with a way higher risk of returning in a coffin. This charade points to a glaring truth. The government's ideological machine has failed to convert that proud historical victory into widespread enthusiasm for modern aggression. The illusion of a second great patriotic war are undone by a massive price tag for new recruits. If you have to pay people tens of thousands of dollars to fight, then your Great War sequel is just a mercenary gig in fancy packaging. Gone are the days when Russians needed no prompting to defend their land from a clear existential threat. Today's conflict is unmasked as an expansionist venture, cushioned by petro money that might plug holes for a while, but will not hide the cynicism forever. Well, there you have it, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.